So good news, but I was left on the streets, and it was midwinter in the UK, very cold. So I couldn't even sleep. Or for the few days, I had to just walk in the night so I don't freeze to death, literally. Then the story continued. I was living at one house that a woman helped me with. Then I moved to a garage which had no electricity, no water at the other end of the town, which was Hampstead, like 3.5 miles away. I was living in a garage without electricity and water, 3.5 miles away from my workplace. And every day I had to go there walking. And this was my life for a long time. I changed jobs eventually. And all that time I spent very miserable. This was the most miserable part of my life. It was for 18 months in total in that
Mm.
garage.
You're listening to When God Intervenes, the podcast where faith, hope, and healing come together for families with a loved one battling addiction. Hi, and welcome to another episode of When God Intervenes. I'm your host, Daryl Rogers, and I'm here today with Peter Krastev. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Daryl. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Always happy to share the word of God and my experience, because it did something in my life very big. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, good. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. You know, when I look at you, Peter, I can just see, man, you just glow. I can really tell that you've had a genuine experience, and that you're just full of life, full of God's power and God's energy. The Holy Spirit is really coming through when I talk to you. And so you just give off that energy, you know.
Happy
So
to hear it. I really am, because I do recognize it sometimes when I see it in other people.
yeah,
You see it and you think, man, they really have it. Yeah,
yeah. I know you're a fitness coach. So you're in Bulgaria. That's your home country.
correct.
And I know you left Bulgaria and went to the UK for a while, and now you're back. You're back home, and um, why don't you start with? Why don't we just kind of go back to the early days and what was going on as you're growing up in Bulgaria? What was your childhood like there?
So I live in a kind of normal family for the area. We're not rich. My parents work the same job for 2-3 decades. They just retired recently. So I grew up having a home. They provided for me anything they could, and I wasn't left hungry or anything like that. Um, but it didn't meet my expectations for life. When I was at school, I was the bullied kid. I was looking really funny. Everybody was making jokes of me pretty much every day, and I wasn't able to defend myself or stand up for myself. And I ended up resenting going to school every single day, and that kept going for the duration I've been to school, which is a very long time. Probably at the age of about 16 is when I discovered, different kind of groups of people, different friends, which were practically taking some drugs, some amphetamines, some smoking weed, and I kind of started mixing up with these guys, and I also started training a little bit, and that gave me something that I was missing, that approval, that feeling of fitting in, having friends and belonging somewhere. Might not be, the best way to fit in somewhere, but it was better than what I had before
Hmm.
in my experience, and so I sticked with it. And I was living this life with friends from the streets, on the streets all the time. Lots of drugs, parties, but I wasn't happy at all. All these periods, the times I was taking the drugs, it feels like that was making me feel happy in a way, but it was only masking the holes in my life. And every time I don't have the drugs, the holes reveal. and you go on with your life for long enough, these holes become bigger and more, and you can't even hide them. So it was just obvious that I'm not doing what I need to do with my life. Eventually, I got into university for 1 year. That lifestyle continued in there. And at the end of the year, I decided to quit university because it just wasn't for me. I couldn't find anything that really appeals to me in there. I was there just because my parents told me to. And I would say that's a pretty average life for what you see around here in this place, Varna, Bulgaria. And then I found a new girlfriend who had a kid, and I didn't know at the beginning, but when she told me, right, like 1 month in, I decided to commit and just do it because I had these aspirations to be successful, to be rich, to have the things that were supposed to give me some happiness and what I was looking for in my life, really. And having this kid was obviously going to be making things harder, but I didn't know how much harder because I barely had any experience. That's me at the age of 22ish, something.
Hmm.
And I committed to this, but it turned out to be extremely toxic relationship. We started living together very quickly. We could not pay the rent, the bills, couldn't feed the kids. It was a real mess. There was no day without shouting and arguing very, very badly, very aggressively. So it was very miserable, to be honest, at that time. And one day I lost another job. I think that's 1 year into the relationship. I lost like maybe the fifth job I lose in a row very quickly because of an accident, which I don't even need to go down there. It was very disappointing, but it opened a door for me, and that door was to leave the country and go to the UK. And that's where my life journey really, I think, begins with the intensity that started really changing me and making me who I am. So I took that opportunity. I found myself in the UK, and I barely got there. By the way, we didn't have money, as I said. So my mom somehow found 500 euros. No idea where she found this money from because we practically used anything we could. She
Hmm.
gave them to me. I bought the tickets. The remaining of the money I gave to my girlfriend so she can pay the bills whilst I get paid, which I never did, by the way. But that's another point, another part of the story. And I just took 10 euros for myself, took a bag, old luggage bag that I bought secondhand, put all my clothes that I had, and with 10 euros in my pocket, and just left for the UK. And yes, they work with pounds. I had the euros. And that's how I landed up there. I had a place to live for a couple of weeks to at the car wash owner's house. He was giving the house, and he was providing the work. We were supposed to go there and to start working in a secure job where I make money right away. But the car wash was facing bankruptcy at the time, and I didn't know that. I go there, I'm supposed to wash cars. There's no cars to wash, and I have to pay rent
Yeah.
for the car wash, and I have to pay rent for the house at the same time with the money that I make from the car wash. But the car wash makes no money. So
Wow.
I escaped from there. I found another car wash in a similar way. It was very bad, really horrible place. I was working like 12 hours plus, very hard job. They were super busy. It was completely different, but they were paying us a little money. It's still something. It was £80 per week is what I was having remaining. They were giving me £30 a day, and with that I had to pay the rent for the house, pay for my girlfriend's bills and back at home because she couldn't work and she had to look after the kid. And a lot of these financial struggles really. And at that point my life was very miserable. And I left that car wash, and the moment I left, I actually had to escape the car wash for a second time for my trial day at my new job, which again, very long story to explain how I got there, but I had
Hmm.
to do this dodgy stuff to find a way to get out of there. And the car wash owners, they kicked me out on the streets on that day when I left. Luckily, the new boss that I was having at Subway, he liked me on Matrawe, and he said, "I'll take you." So good news, but I was left on the streets, and it was midwinter in the UK, very cold. So I couldn't even sleep. Or for the few days, I had to just walk in the night so I don't freeze to death, literally. Then the story continued. I was living at one house that a woman helped me with. Then I moved to a garage which had no electricity, no water at the other end of the town, which was Hampstead, like 3.5 miles away. I was living in a garage without electricity and water, 3.5 miles away from my workplace. And every day I had to go there walking. And this was my life for a long time. I changed jobs eventually. And all that time I spent very miserable. This was the most miserable part of my life. It was for 18 months in total in that garage.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things happened to me. I had surgeries, crashes with cars whilst I was riding a bicycle. A lot of loneliness. This was something that just multiplied the struggles that I had in my life by many times. We could say 10x. I had this feeling of being lonely, being alone, and failing in life, which was overwhelming. And the only thing that really kept me going at that time is me going to the gym to take showers. I mean, that going to the gym and riding the bike to there, that physical activity. Now I see how this is the only thing that kept me going. Without that, I would have ended my life. I didn't want to live. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I only preserved my life because I didn't want to do this to my mom, my parents. That's literally my only thought that saved me at the time. And in this period, you know, you end up seeing that you're not as smart as you are. When things like that happen to you, you tend to realize you're not as good as you thought you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very hard realization, and it took me a long time. Even after this garage, I had to move to a basement of a laundry shop for another 2 years. I've tried a few things, changed jobs. The relationship ended like 4 years in, and after a lot of challenges, the story is very long. The challenges were extreme. I ended up the relationship, but the struggle continued. I was supposed to have a better life when the relationship ended. I was supposed to now have all this energy and motivation to work in the same way, which was something I discovered in me. I discovered the ability to work very hard, to be relentless. And I said, I'm going to do this for myself now. And I started doing it at first. But then again, I found myself being miserable when my business failed. And I found myself like at the age of 28 or so is when everything failed. I was supposed to be already rich. I had no friends, lost my home, lost my friends, barely had a chance to get back to see my parents. The situation was very weird, and I was disappointed, and that's where really I started seeking for an answer. But would you like me to share this? I have a couple experiences with God just before I found God. Maybe you
Uh,
can track how I found God and how He changed everything for me. And you see, maybe as I mentioned earlier, I think this is something that happens to a lot of people. And now I see it in my friends, the ones that are not believers yet. I sometimes tell them about God, and I see how God is blessing them just because He saved me. There's that when He saves you, He will save the people around you who love you.
mm,
And I see Him doing it, but they don't recognize it. So people have to listen and have to see that there is external power, something can actually work in your life, and it can actually help you. It's there. So during my stay in the garage at the very beginning, actually the first night or the second night of the garage, I had to go in the middle of the night after a long night shift to take assemble a wardrobe, to take one big huge wooden wardrobe which was the in parts was the word assembled. I'm not sure how to say it in English, so excuse me,
mm,
but it was in parts, right? And it was left outside next to the bin. It was a mile or mile and a bit away from my garage. So I had to go
uh,
there and do these rounds about 4 or 5 times, carrying heavy wooden pieces so I can take this wardrobe and build a bed from it because my garage was getting flooded. long story. The garage was crazy. Um, in that night when I just finished with the wardrobe, and I just wanted to go to the shop before it closes. So I was so tired, and I was walking outside like midnight. The shop's still open, and I started crying. The first time since a kid, I found myself really crying. Just realized I'm broken, and I was walking, and I felt really hard. And I looked at the sky that moment, and I said, just from the inside, it came out of me, and I prayed, if something is out there, I need to know right now, because I don't know how long am I going to be able to continue this. I need to know right now. And the thing, why I was walking to the shop was the actual thing. I had to choose to buy a lighter so I can light my candles and manage to get out of the flooded garage in the morning, or to buy donuts so I can eat. I had only £1, and I chose the candles because I work in Subway. I'll eat on the next day. I won't die if I don't eat. And that struggle really hit me. And I was, as I was crying, and I prayed it to the sky, and there was a lot of stars and all that. And the moment I prayed, just continued walking. It wasn't even 10 seconds when I looked left of me, in the middle of the road, in the dark night. Like, you can't see anything. I saw a pound laying in the middle of the road. £1. That made my pounds too. So I now could buy the candles, and I could buy the donuts too. And I did. And it hit me like something just happened, but I did not believe at all. I was just so stubborn and so into my head. And then I
Mm-hmm.
continued this life. And what's more interesting, 2 weeks later, or few weeks later, not long, same story is happening. I feel really bad. We need money urgently. They can't pay the bills at home. The electricity will stop. Lots of shit happening. I need a solution. I spent the night walking in the city, in the town center, looking for something, just to find somebody lost something, to find some money, to just trying to find something, because that was the only thing I can come up with at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find anything. The whole Hemel Hempstead town center was filled with rubbish. The streets filled. Couldn't find anything. I walked every single corner, anything. And I sat down in a shop, in front of a shop. I sat on the curb, on the window. I sat on the window, and sitting there thinking how miserable my life is. And I did it again. I was just thinking, this time was a logical decision. Last time I prayed and it was answered, so I'll pray again, and we'll see what happens. That was the wildest bet you can take. For a non-believer, this is like you have a better chance winning a lottery than this happening again,
Right.
right?
uh,
And I did it. I prayed real quick. Help me again. I recognize you. I think I maybe thanked. I showed appreciation for last time. Believe it. It it was like a few seconds after, I just looked down next to me, on the place where I was sat, that far next to me. Like, I was sat next to a golden earring. It was a golden earring, and I knew it's gold because I worked with gold before, and I saw it, and I was like,
mm-hmm.
wow, what just happened? That gold
Mm-hmm.
was enough to pay all the bills that I had to pay. It gave me more money than I needed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out of the situation with that prayer, and I didn't listen. And I didn't listen, and I continued my life, and that continued for a few more years. So if you miss God's signs, it takes a long time for the next one sometimes. And I think the next ones were like very far ahead. And this is my life, man. This was really a life of failure, of misery, alone, no friends whatsoever. Really, really tough.
So, so it sounds like so you were really, really struggling financially, and just struggling with a lot of things.
Always, yeah.
And these signs you prayed, and these signs that gave you hope. You were it kind of kept you going for a little while, and then now you had doubts about, was there a God, and if there is, who is He? And but now you're starting to believe a little bit. So um, how did you get to the next step? How did you discover who God was, and start to transform how did He begin to transform your life?
Yeah,
In
I'll share that. Before I share that, I want to clarify something because now I start realizing it. When people look at me and the same way I look at other people, we judge them by the way they look.
mm,
And I sometimes see somebody who looks very well, and I look at them and I think they kind of have had very hard life. I mean, their teeth are straight, they look well groomed, and you know they have a place to live. Sometimes you can't see the struggle in these people, and
mm-hmm,
I now see maybe people can't see the struggle in me. My teeth, I fixed them up. Like they were very crooked teeth. The way I was looking, it wasn't nice. There are photos out of me. You can't even recognize me. So I was really visibly also broken, not just, it's not
mm-hmm,
what you're
mm-hmm,
seeing right now is the product of what happened after
uh-huh,
that event. So the way I was saved and the way I found God, it was in a miraculous way, really, the way God works. He he probably decided now it's time to bring him in. And I changed the place I live one day. Just after I lost my business, a few months later, I changed the place I live. I moved to Leighton in London. And on the second day or so, I had to go to cut my hair somewhere. I needed a barber shop. And walking on the street, I saw a barber shop that it looked really cool to me. There was a black guy there trimming, and I was like liking the vibe, and I was thinking, yeah, that's the place I'm gonna go. And I went in there, and he started chatting to me a lot. Like he was a very friendly guy. We were having a lot of conversations, and he got the started talking about this God and what's my understanding. And I had somewhat of a theory about energy, how the world is made of, these energy fields, and how we have a soul, which is probably the main energy. And I had this weird theory, which I know a lot of people still have, which kind of makes sense, but it's just missing something. And that missing was something that he spotted, and he managed to somehow explain it to me. That really intrigued me. He said to me, "This is what you're missing is the Holy Spirit is the third element." And I was like, "What third element?" And he explained to me what the Holy Spirit is. So all I knew is that there is a soul and there is a body, but he's now saying there's a third part, and the spirit and the soul, they're not the same. And I was like, really? So what is it then? And he started explaining to me, and he showed me his Bible. Maybe he read a few verses, and he got me really intrigued. And I at that point, I knew I'm stupid. I knew I'm not as smart as I thought I am. I don't stand much chance in life, not as much as I thought I do, because I continue failing. I'm almost 30 years old. How long should I continue fail until I learn? And it wasn't like I wasn't working hard in life. I was working harder than anyone. I was the highest paid driver in Amazon at some point, because I was in the whole country, because I was just working so hard. In
mm-hmm,
Subway, I was promoted as a manager for the newest and best Subway in the country again, because I was working so hard. It wasn't hard work that's lacking. And I couldn't see myself being much more stupid than the other guys. There was literally something really missing in there. And
mm-hmm,
I didn't know what. And I think this guy showed me that I maybe don't know something. And I was curious. I wanted to understand. He told me, if you want to find out and you want to really see it, go and pray tonight. And he said, pray that God forgives you, to reveal himself, and make sure to say that you do it in the name of Jesus. To me, it didn't mean much, that prayer. But
mm-hmm,
that prayer, I did it, and that prayer is what changed my life. I went that night in bed. I still remember how the ceiling looks, and I just prayed, and that's it. Absolutely nothing happened. And I just go to bed, I'm already in bed and I fall asleep. Nothing happens next day, and I go out in the evening with a friend. We got high, we had a beer, and we're just sitting at a table. And getting high for me was, just a regular experience, nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was sitting on the table, people would say you probably just something happened because of the drugs, but it wasn't the drugs. I got hypnotized in watching some Christmas lights for some reason, and I was looking at these lights, and then I felt in a way that I never felt before in that moment. Something was different. And I felt something, and I started having this conversation in my mind, and it was like I was receiving the feedback as well. And that conversation wasn't just a conversation; it had the power to forgive me. There was a specific thing, and maybe some other things that I was feeling guilty about. My my consciousness was I did wrong here. I did wrong to somebody, and I shouldn't have done that. And that thing forgave me there. Nobody's ever forgiven me in my life before, and it really captivated me for this like 15 minutes. I was sitting in there, and I stopped, suddenly got out of this thing. My friend was sitting next to me on the table, and I just looked at him, and I told him, look, I just believed in God. I just became a believer. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, I believe you. he, he's that kind of guy who gets me, but he's not like me, and he hasn't found God yet, but he somehow said that. And it was a weird experience. I just knew something happened, and I go back home. Nothing really too weird happened after that. But I know that on the next day, when I woke up, I had this insane urge to go and speak to that barber to ask him what the hell happened. So the first thing in the morning, I didn't go to work. I just left my house and I went straight through the door of the barber shop. He was sitting on the counter, and I was like, tell me what happened to me. Like, you have to tell me what just happened. And he was like very happy, and what happened. And I shared with him the story, and he asked me, how did you feel? What did you feel when that happened? And then I answered it for the first time, and I said, pure love. These are the words that came out of my mind without even knowing
Mm-hmm.
what else to say. That
Mm-hmm.
was really the explanation what happened. A pure love experience, which I've shared this story like 1,000 times. In the first 500 times, I was crying every single time. So for me not to
Mm-hmm.
get emotional about it is because I just have accepted it long
Mm-hmm.
ago. It really changed my life. And yeah, man, that's how it started. This guy actually came to be a deacon. I didn't know that. A deacon in a black church in London. And he
Mm-hmm.
showed me the roads. He showed me a lot of things, some books, and I was listening, learning, and my life completely changed so much. And I changed from the inside first. All these negative habits or things that I was tending to do, which sometimes hurt other people or myself or my parents, which I was feeling guilty about, habits that I was just carrying for years, for all my life. Suddenly, they weren't there. They were like lifted off, like gone. And with that, also, I was flooded with that sense of peace, and peace, which, knowing my life story, I never felt that in my life. And I was waking up with that, I was working with that peace. And every single day for a month, I was crying multiple times in a day. And I wasn't crying because I was something sad. I was so grateful that something, to somebody. I didn't know God yet. Yes, I was saved. I only did a few prayers. I didn't know much. I was still learning. And my whole life changed. The people who were negative around me, the people who were taking drugs, they're all gone. And in the same way, everything that I touched now is succeeding in. Whatever I try to do is just being blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Some crazy doors open for me, and my life is changing in a way that I couldn't even imagine before. And before I was saved, everything that I touched was falling apart. Any person that's coming to my life was somewhat toxic and taking away from me. My relationships were falling apart. Every single thing, my businesses, my jobs.
Mm.
After God, this has never happened again. Absolutely everything in my life works for good, and it's just getting better. And
Um,
that's never stopped.
that's an interesting part of your story, because of everyone's story is different. Everyone's journey is different, and when you talked about being broken, um, there have been several times in my life when I've felt broken. I'm 63 years old, so I've got 30 years on you.
Yeah.
and, and so I've had a few, there's several stories, but I can't, I went through the broken relationships, with uh, romances and all of that. And I've been through financial hardships just like you. And but when I lost my oldest son Chase, when he died in the wreck in 2014, man, I don't think I've ever been any more broken than that. And I was already a believer at that point. So I mean, we do still get tested at times as believers. You read the book of Job. Job was loyal to God in spite of um, all of the things that he went through. And all of this is just, I think it's, when we are tested, and there can be ups and downs. When we are tested, it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity
Oh
for
yeah.
us to get to a new level spiritually, to get to a new level with
Yeah.
God. And sometimes we struggle with that, though. Uh,
But you're right, and I've recognized that what you're saying, that it's an opportunity. I've
mhm.
recognized it so much, and I love God so much that whenever I struggle, I actually feel happy because I know
Mm.
this is now God making me better and closer to Him.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. Um, So, so it sounds like, did you ever go to any type of a treatment program for your drug
No,
habit, or no, you just found God and you just
yeah,
started, you didn't have the desire for that anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some desires for some drugs occasionally, like
Mm,
just smoking weed. Really, just it had happened a few times, but God is changing you. I'm not. I wasn't in that period. I wasn't dependent on that. This thing had no power over me. It had no
mm,
power
mm,
to
mm.
destroy my life the way it had before. And progressively, even that's gone. It,
Yeah.
God works in you. When He sent you the Holy Spirit, that's it. Game over. Your old life, your old self stands no chance. You might fight with it, it's going to change you. Better
Hmm.
don't fight so you can, have a better life. Let
Yeah.
it let it overtake you. And that's what I did. I'm literally waking up with the same prayer every day. God, take me and use me however you like. Like, I don't want to have a voice. I don't want to have the power to say no to what you want me to do. Just do whatever it
Mm-hmm.
takes. And I truly feel and pray that, because I just recognize how stupid I am on my own. So better he does the job.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really good point that you bring up there. That um, you know, just because we have this conversion experience and we're becoming a new person, a new creation, doesn't mean that we're not going to still have some temptations, right? And it doesn't just immediately go away. But God, um, he works in us and changes us, and so those, you can work through that. And it sounds like it happened pretty quickly for you, but it's not like it just overnight just went away,
Some
right?
things happen overnight. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
gotta make this clear. Some of my habits and some of my things, they just disappeared overnight. Things that
Uh-huh.
I've been carrying for years. But
Mm-hmm.
others seems like they're just not in the priority list, right? Like it almost seems like God has to take me through a journey so he gets the final product, right?
Right.
And he
Yeah.
doesn't need to fix everything right away.
Right. Mm.
he can,
Yeah.
but he some things he just lets them stay there so he can maybe learn something else too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 That's really good. Um, so let's see. So you had a habit early on of working out and exercising, and even before you had your transformation experience with, and before you met God, and that those are good habits. And but as you found out, I mean, it takes a lot more than that, right? I mean, you can be fit, and
yeah,
you can even be, there are a lot of people out there who are uh, doing well financially, but
yeah,
still are missing something in life, right? They're still missing, and maybe they're physically fit, they're financially well off, and yet they have this emptiness there that they're struggling with, and so, but I'm it is. I think it is a good habit. I mean, the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and so
yeah,
God does tell us that we need to take care of this temple, that we need to treat it like a temple, and so the exercise and proper nutrition, all of that is really important. Um, so take us through how you went from your salvation experience there in the UK, and how that take us through the journey from that time back into the fitness world, and leading up to where you are now.
yeah. Well, so there's a huge one main difference which I want to emphasize on, that the things that actually started happening, and how just blessing after blessing, and how everything I was touching just working. So when I was saved, it's just a few months before that, maybe 2 3 months or less, I lose the order of the events in my mind. But it's when I decided to commit to sports. It was a specific sport called calisthenics, which is very much just resistance training, but with your own body. And I decided to commit my whole life to this because I knew that I'm failing because of two main reasons. And I actually spent 6 months before I do that. Before I did that, I spent these 6 months analyzing the top most successful people in the world, and looking for those who really have the joy and who really stay in there. I wasn't interested in seeing people who just got there by fame or got there in some miraculous way. I was curious to see how the people who came from nothing and now are on the top there and just stay and have a good life, how did they do it? Like, this is what I want. And I came to the conclusion that there was two things which they all had, and I didn't have them. And I decided to reverse engineer the whole process, and that's what led me to making this decision to commit to sports. They all loved what they do, or at least they say they did, and they all never quit. These two things I was also always doing them. I was a massive quitter. I might be in a business for 2 years, and sometimes it felt like I was quitting because something else happened to me and I just had no power over it. But I recognized that this is still my fault. I let it happen and get to there, and I quit. And I never loved what I did. So I didn't love sports. In fact, I used to hate going to the gym sometimes and to work out. It wasn't my thing at all. But I decided I will do this for the rest of my life as my only option. And I made a wild bet because I wasn't an athlete. I was out of shape. I had no knowledge. I thought I do, but I didn't have any knowledge. And I got into this journey, then God saved me. And then I started learning about the whole thing, studying, getting certified. And I was thinking I know a little bit, but it wasn't much. And then COVID hit when I was already like into it. I think I was having a client or two, and COVID hit. And during COVID, I had a lot of financial struggles, which made me stay at home because I couldn't drive my car. I was a cab driver. And in that period, God created an opportunity for me. There was a new social media platform which even up to till today a lot of people don't know about it. It was called Clubhouse. It still exists actually, but
Oh yeah.
it's 0.1% of what it was back then. It was the
Hmm.
only thing, and it was during a moment in time in history where everybody's at home and has nothing to do. It was flooded with people. That Clubhouse app is an app where people talk just with voice. There's no video, but there's like big rooms where we all get in, and there is a stage and there is an audience. In the stage, the speakers speak. There is somebody who is the host and a bunch of moderators who can also moderate the room.
Hmm.
And these rooms were on different topics: business, lifestyle, even health and fitness. And what was interesting, they were filled with very successful people, with very rich people, and all sorts of people. And I quickly started getting into these rooms and I got obsessed over it actually. I really got obsessed. I was staying like for 12 hours in because I was surrounded by very successful people in there all the time, listening how they think, what they do. And to me, that was great. That was like what I really needed. It started
Hmm.
giving me the financial education, the mindset that I needed. And there was also health and fitness room, which I started joining. It was for health and fitness professionals, and there was a lot of experts from around the world, which were talking things that you couldn't hear on the streets or on YouTube or in the books when you're studying for what I'm trying to do. These are the people that were saying the ins and outs of it, the whole thing, like the whole story of how you train, how you eat, how you sleep, why is it important, how does it work when you have clients, and how the science works. What is the science? What is wrong? What is right? A lot of information. Quickly after me joining into these rooms is when I realized the founder of that room there. It was only one big room. He he was just he was pretty much average kind of guy, nobody, been 20 years in the industry but still got nowhere. He also found this opportunity same as me, and he started the room before I joined Clubhouse. So to me, he had no passion. He had nothing that is really genuine the way I have it. I had so much passion to make it and so much desire to make it, and he had nothing, but he didn't accept me at all into the community. He was only looking for people with some certificates, with some achievements, and I was kind of rejected from that place because I was new, and it triggered me. And there was a billionaire, only one billionaire in the whole app at that time, and he became my friend in the app. We were talking often,
Wow.
and he told me something, an advice, and I took that advice. He said, "You have to start your own room." At that time, my English wasn't as close to what it is right now, so I couldn't speak
Hmm.
well. He's asking me to host my own room and speak in front of a public and lead the whole show and have a topic, which is outrageous asking
Uh,
a guy like me at that time. But
uh,
I already knew I have God. I already kind of had some understanding what God is and how He helps me, and I had faith that I can do that. And I did it. I opened my room and I sticked with it. That room grew up. It became the second biggest, and in integrity, by integrity, in my opinion, became absolutely the best. We had all sorts of experts. All of the other room, they were also coming to my room, including a bunch of others, which I helped bring. I helped them bring them up, in Clubhouse. So I became somebody in there, and I was leading that show for 3 hours every single day. And the events that happen, they are undescribable. You have to be there to understand how,
mm,
to see how adult people come and cry in my rooms and or debate and argue and the things that happen. And when I say cry, I actually mean it. A lot of people cried in my rooms for one or another reason, just sharing things. I shared as well. I shared my story then, and that healed me. And that process, I was just asking questions about anything that comes to my mind in the health and fitness industry. And this was a learning experience which by so far, I don't know anyone in the world who had anything close to that. There's a huge difference between learning from a school, from one school and everything they teach in one school, or from one institution for a certificate, or from one gym floor and you keep working there for 15 years and maybe learning in one school for another few years and just have a few friends. Between this and having experts from around the world, maybe hundreds of them, athletes, world champions, their coaches, all sorts of achievements in athleticism, black belts, the best coach in the world, the best nutritionists, scientists who write the papers that we read today. These people were in my rooms, and there was a huge difference between the first example and this example. What you see is that there's different opinions. There's information that is verified, there's information that's wrong, that's not truly communicated to the people in the right way. There's a lot of things that just make you understand the world much better than anyone who's just been into a school or just been into one gym floor for all his life. What I learned was a precedented experience, never happened before in the history. You couldn't get people from around the world all together, experts in the health and fitness industry, talk and debate and really get into such depth of the conversations. And that
Mm-hmm.
happened to me. It happened to me. It gave me tremendous knowledge about what's going on. And, I'm now seeing how much knowledge they gave me, because I sometimes meet some personal trainers from gym floors, or I look to social media posts and what people were talking about. And I recognize how far behind these people are. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that event to really understand what's going on. And that
Yeah,
experience helped me.
I remember I was invited into Clubhouse, and I remember when Clubhouse was really, really going, and I experimented with it a little bit. It just never really caught on with me, but I'm glad that you found your niche there, and that you found the right platform for you at that time, that was able to propel you to the next level. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Peter, my audience is just sitting here thinking as I'm listening to you talk, and my audience is primarily it's parents who have a son or daughter battling addiction. Now, I'm sure there are some people who who hear this podcast also, who are maybe just people struggling with addiction, or maybe they're in recovery. But there's also, like I said, the main audience is parents, and most of them are mothers. Most of them are mothers, probably from their 40s to their 70s, who have a son or daughter battling drug or alcohol addiction. And so what they struggle with a lot is a lot of chronic worry, a lot of stress around the fact that their child, it's out of their control, but they're worried constantly that their child is battling this addiction, and they're worried about what's going to happen to them. And one of the things that I tell them, aside from, first and foremost, is really a relationship with God through His Son Jesus. Because
Yeah.
first of all, I'm going to. I got a couple of points I want to make here on the
Yeah.
way to where I'm going. The one is that, if you can become sober and not you and you stop using drugs and not really be recovered, and not really be in recovery, and not really have the fulfillment that you would find with that relationship with God through Jesus. Without that, you're still missing something, right?
Yeah.
Even though you might be sober, you might be feeling better, your life's going a little better, but there's still something missing there. But aside from that, they're dealing with all of this stress. And I have been one of those people who my whole life I've worked out. You may not, I'm 63 years old, and the years have taken a toll on my body. I competed in sports and things when I was younger, and I have some sports injuries and all, but I'm in pretty good shape for a 63-year-old. And back in my 20s, I was competing in some bodybuilding contests. Never used any performance enhancing drugs or anything like that, and that's probably the reason I got out of that sport, because I saw it was going to be difficult to
Yeah.
compete, without using performance enhancing drugs. But uh, I've had a habit my whole life of exercise, and I have found that has been key to relieving stress, to being able to feel good physically, even when things around me are not going good in my life. And so I want you to speak. I wonder if you could just speak to that for a minute for the listeners out there. Talk about how vital exercise is, how it could help maybe these moms who are out there listening, or other parents who are out there listening, who are struggling with the stress. Uh,
Yeah. So it's the one you hit on the one problem, which when happens to people, I also always send them to God to pray
mm,
and have
mm,
faith. Because when you're worried about somebody else, especially your kid, somebody close to you, the only way you stop worrying about this person is in case he doesn't change. The only way you stop and you overcome that is through having pure faith that God has this.
mm.
Because
Yeah,
he really does.
yeah,
He really does. But if you
yeah.
don't have faith, it's like he doesn't. You first have to believe. And if you're having such a situation in your life, the best thing will be you pray every single day about it, and you also show gratitude and be grateful for your prayers being answered. You need to
Mm,
have that faith, and this does relate a lot to the training and the ability to to cope with the stress, just through exercising and keeping yourself healthy. So because there are two things that might be need to be considered. The number one thing is if you're having health complications right now, if you're overweight right now, and if you're having health issues, every day you wake up with them, you have little pains and aches, or maybe barely walk, and you have diabetes, or things that make you feel like shit every single day, all the time. That is so emotionally draining. And then you're trying to cope with the stress that your kid is not okay. I see no hope for you managing in any way, shape, or form that stress is just going to continue killing you. You have
mm,
to turn to God, but you also can have a little bit of hope just by exercising every day and getting into shape.
mm,
Alleviating that the pains and the struggles from the discomfort of being unhealthy and having these health conditions is a big thing. A lot of the
mm,
people and the parents there who work hard all their life, they don't even remember what it is to be healthy. For them, it's like the norm to have something that doesn't feel good. But the truth is, majority of the problems they can be alleviated through working out, and
mm,
eating better, making smarter choices. A lot of these can be alleviated, which is a big thing. You don't realize how big it is until you do it. You when you start training for the first time after 20 years, it's only the idea of what it could be. But once you do it, and that's when you realize, how this affects you and how it's changing your life. That's when you see the impact of training it can have on you. And there's also the acute effect of training, which is also very powerful. And the one thing that kept me moving in my hard times, every time you exercise, every time you move and you exert yourself, and also you're not just moving the body, you're producing these great hormones that make you feel good. But you're also overcoming yourself. You're overcoming a struggle, which in the long run just makes you stronger. So that's a good bet if you want to improve and overcome these challenges. It's a very sure bet to be exercising every day or almost every day. A very sure bet. In the same way, if you want things to get harder, it's a very sure bet not to do it.
mm,
Things will continue getting harder. So it is something that you definitely want to do. And also, when you're exercising every single day, you have a little bit of hope, a little bit of feeling good. And that
Mm-hmm.
is something that is reminding you that you're alive. That is reminding you that there is hope. And it's happening every day. It really does. And it's something. If you don't do it, the only thing that's going to give you hope is you eat a chocolate, having sex, or eating something, or taking drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And these things, they will just give you a little bit and they'll take twice more and they'll take it fast. If you really want to, gain from the experience and move forward and pile up the gains instead of having them taken away from you and with the
Mm-hmm.
negative, with the interest, then the surest bet is exercising and eating well,
Yeah.
cutting out the processed foods, eating high protein foods, having structured regimen, and exercising, moving in nature, and also lifting weights, strength training. This is the surest bet, right? So I hope I
Yeah.
explained it the way I see it and how
Yeah.
powerful it is.
Yeah. And I like that you're using the term training there, uh, because we really have to, as followers of Jesus, we really have to train. Um, we have to train our spirit. We have to train our mind. So, I mean, spending time in the Word, spending time in prayer and meditation, spending time around other believers, because iron sharpens iron. Other believers strengthen us. And so we're training constantly that way as those of us who are Christians. And then the physical training is just another element. It's just part of training your body. And like you were saying, there's all kinds of neurochemicals that are released when you train physically that help you feel better. And yeah, you were speaking about the you can get a dopamine release, right, from the things that you
Dopamine,
mentioned.
endorphins, adrenaline, noradrenaline,
Yeah, yeah.
these chemicals, they practically make you feel good immediately and they stay there for a
Mm.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the exercise is definitely one component of being able to battle that constant worry. Potentially some people get depressed, but being able to become more resilient and battling that stress, I think is really an important factor there. So tell us a little bit more about your type of. You mentioned earlier, I think, body weight. You do mostly body weight exercises. Is that right?
I do
Or you
mix them up. This is
you do
still a
make
passion of
okay.
mine, kind of, I committed to that. But one thing that being in Clubhouse gave me and surrounding myself with the experts is open my mind that there is countless varieties of exercises and ways to get fit and achieve a result. Use whatever you want. It's the beauty of it. So yeah. So you were asking to talk about what we do and how they can use it, or
Yeah. What kind of tell us a little bit about your methods and your business and how how can people get in touch with you? What can they learn? How can they learn from you and apply your methods?
yeah. First thing, I'm just releasing the podcasts. By the time you release this episode, it's gonna be out on the 7th of January.
Mm.
My podcast is called Limitless Body and Mind. This is the same name as the community that I had back in the 2020 or so when the COVID hit. And the podcast is going to teach them anything that they need to know about getting in shape. It's a solo podcast for the first season where I talk in depth about everything. So this is a free information that is super impactful. You should go and check it out and listen to it. And with the podcast, you also find a free program for a month, which is also in depth, even more than the podcast, which takes you step by step from point A to point Z, from one to really have a deep understanding and start training and getting in shape. So these are very powerful tools. I I just can't say that enough. There's almost nothing like that there. I personally haven't seen anything like that there outside. So maybe it exists, maybe not. This is information and guidance that they need. Anyone who wants to understand more, they need that. What you will find in there is our methodologies, which is practically when I work with my clients, I work with one-to-one with clients. We also have a group setting, but it's all one-to-one, and we have the group. I getting them all together, and we have experiences, and I'm taking them through the whole journey. So everybody starts from somewhere. You could be starting from a fairly fit body, just a little bit overweight, or you might be having many other challenges. I will take into consideration your lifestyle right now, your job, the stressors, the family that you have, how much time do you have, where do you live, what equipment do you have with you, do you have a gym, what dietary preferences you have, what is your cultural habits, the habits in home. I take into account everything that's happening in your life, and I help you create something that will take us to the end goal with whatever that is. And we'll use training. So you'll be training either at home or at the gym. We'll decide what exercises are best for you, that you like them, and also will do the job. The same we do with the diet. I assess what people eat and how can we just fine tune that instead of just giving them a diet that they can't follow. I prefer just picking collecting photos from everybody. For example, if I work with you, I will just ask you to send me a lot of photos with the foods that you eat for a week. And I'll have all this information, and I'll just tell you, look, we need to change this a little bit, have a little bit more of that and a little bit less of that. We'll start making these changes so they don't experience, super drastic change that they can't stick to.
Right.
And slowly in this way, we start applying the training, the movement, the way to think. We work on the mindset. We get connected with the community. We do things together. We learn together, which is a very great community, by the way. And people change by developing these habits that are sustainable. And over the long period of time, long enough, a few months, you see how somebody who hasn't been in the gym and been training for like 20 years is now kind of addicted to it and really loves it and is getting in better shape every single week. And yeah, it's all through doing just the small things and focusing on habits, one habit at a time. We
Mm-hmm.
change one habit every week, and your life can change. And that's the right way anyone should approach this. If you just go and purchase a training program online because this is the training program marketed by the influencer as the thing that got him there, that's not going to work. If you buy a diet that got that guy there, it's not going to work for you. A lot of that information that you find out there, it's just not going to work for you because it's not for you. And you will be surprised how many varieties of you are out there and how specific the whole approach needs to be to you. It needs to be very specific to really work.
Mm-hmm.
For you to do that, you need to understand it, or you just have somebody with you, or waste a lot of time to try to understand it. It's really not easy to change your habits in yourself. And I'm just trying to explain to people to be realistic. Don't have these magic expectations that you would now start training. It's a New Year's now, and you will just stick to it. If you haven't done it before, the highest probabilities you'll make some mistakes which will derail you from the progress, and maybe you'll
Mm-hmm.
lose one hope and you'll stop one day. Uh, it's a bit trickier, but it's very simple in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
In the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's very simple. But most people will overtrain, will over diet, will not
Uh,
rest enough, will not sleep well. They will develop a wrong relationship with the food and the training, which will make them resent it, which also is going to lead to ending the whole journey. These are small things, but they're what matters. So hope that kind of helped.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's important for. I mean, not everyone. I guess not everyone needs a coach, but I think it's certainly helpful to have a coach to point you in the right direction. With when it
Yeah,
comes to just about anything, but especially when it comes to physical training, because uh, you know we tend to first of all we need the accountability. Most of us need the accountability of having a coach, and we need the guidance to. A lot of times we get stuck in a rut and we don't do some of the things that we needed. We can't see some of the things that a coach can see and kind of help, get us back on track.
Yeah,
So yeah,
100%.
and it's
Coach is better always.
yeah,
Most people can
yeah,
do without a coach. I don't think like we're not born to need a coach. We have a God to help us and guide us, but He's sending you the coach to just help you and
all
guide you
right,
much faster, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you're getting there way faster and way better, making way less mistakes. So it's
yeah,
100%
yeah,
worth it having one. So,
for sure, yeah, yeah. Um, well, great, Peter. Let's see. Tell me the name of your website one more time.
it's pk.coach. Very simple. It doesn't end on com. pk.coach. Uh,
PK.coach.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm also on all social media channels. I'm sure if anyone is interested, just type my name in Google or Instagram, whatever. It should come up right away.
Okay. Okay. Well, Peter, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. And I know that the listeners are going to get so many valuable things out of this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really hope at least one person we help. That's a big achievement. And I'm sure we will. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. There's someone out there listening who needed to hear this episode for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to When God Intervenes. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps us reach more families in need of hope and healing. For more resources and support, visit our website at thefamilyrecoverycoach.com. Until next time, stay strong and keep the faith.